Can you please give me a quick overview of who you are and what you do at Frank Mobile?
Cool. Absolutely. So my name's Matt O'Connor. I'm the founder of Frank Mobile. We're an online destination for people to come buy the latest premium refurbished iPhones.
Awesome. And what led you to establish Frank Mobile?
It's a bit of a journey, but I've always had a passion in business in particular. And for me, business is like my sporting idols in a way. So I look at the Jeff Bezoses and the Facebooks of the world, and that's where I get inspiration from. And probably about 2016, I took a bit of a leap of faith and went round and travelled across parts of the UK and Europe and met with different entrepreneurs and venture capitalists through some contacts of mine back here, all with the goal of trying to find something for myself. Long story short, that took on a 4-year somewhat expedition of trying bits and pieces, and then in 2018 landed on the concept of Frank Mobile, which was initially born out of the telco industry, but we saw the opportunity within particularly the refurbished electronic space. And when I first came across it, my gut feel was actually like, oh yuck, refurbished, secondhand phones. This is pretty gross. But the more you looked into the industry, particularly in the UK and the US, you saw not only the growth of the industry itself, but it becoming a category on its own. And then we looked in Australia here. This was with myself and our other shareholders, which is a small private equity outfit in Brisbane, Packhorse Investments, and a large ITAD disposition company, ACT Logistics. So we kind of looked at the industry and went, well, nobody's really doing anything, in our opinion, really story-worthy here. There are a lot of good players, and there are many good operators within the industry, but we saw a bit of an opportunity in some white space in trying to build a brand within the industry and ride some of the market waves of what was happening overseas and now to here. Consumer demand was starting to go up. The refurbished industry itself, just to give an example, is growing at about 10 to 12% annually, whereas new phones are about 3%. So I think consumers are becoming savvy that despite how, I'm a raving fan of new iPhones as well, but I don't necessarily need the latest and greatest ones. So yeah, we saw the industry and we went, you know what, let's try and really make an impact here and come in from a bit of a different angle and build a brand first, and that just so happens to buy and sell refurbished phones, and that's what we're trying to do.
Great. How would you define the term refurbished?
Yeah, I think it's a very broad term, and for us, it's actually one of the challenges of the industry in trying to somewhat educate the market as to what refurbished is. As an umbrella term, refurbished can encompass everything from bringing in a completely broken phone, motherboard repair level type of works to it, and going through that repair process to then reselling. But it can also encompass more of just the lower end of the spectrum, which is literally getting it in from a mobile telco trade-in operator, so like a Telstra or an Apple directly, inspecting both the cosmetics and the functionality of it, and then cleaning it up and then reselling it. So we, as Frank Mobile, we really try and stay on that lower end of the spectrum. We don't like to play in that. We're not a repair outfit. We like to play more so in the device space, which is somewhat of a very good working order phone that was maybe used by like one of us that we just upgraded, and then we take it and then we resell it. But yeah, refurbished itself can encompass a broad definition of industries, but I do see the value in refurbished as opposed to say just secondhand. Is when you're dealing with any refurbisher, not just Frank Mobile, but anybody within the space that's somewhat reputable, you're getting not only the trust points that the device has been inspected, tested, and somewhat certifiably ticked off by a professional before getting resold, but then likely you'll get the after-sales support, so you'll get the customer care, you'll get the warranties included, which takes away a lot of the risk of if you're buying through Marketplace or eBay. You just have to do a bit of Googling. You can see the horror stories that come from people who might buy it and it'll work for a couple of months and then dead, and then you can't find the buyer at all. So yeah, it's an umbrella term, but I do think that it does summarise the industry well, where to me refurbished is somebody who's seen it, they've inspected it, they've tested it, and they're guaranteeing that it's operating the way it should be before being resold.
Awesome. What are the similarities and differences between a new phone and a refurbished phone?
Yeah, they're almost the same. like if you're playing, say, with like an iPhone 11, for example, it's a device that's just on 12 months old. It's still such a good, perfectly working device where the similarities to the brand new iPhone 11, again, it's almost exactly the same. Yes, it's been used for 12 months, but I'll probably look at it like an analogy of when you're buying a car. Just because a car's been used for 12 months doesn't mean it's no longer to almost an as new standard if you looked after it well. As you're starting to go into the older models, say like iPhone 7s, iPhone 8s, which are probably one of our highest moving devices on Frank Mobile, and it caters towards that, say, mum or dad buying it for their kids, or somebody's secondary phone for their work phone. Yes, they've been used for a longer life cycles as well, but in my personal opinion, I know there's a bit of there's somewhat of a oversight of the industry where people think that, say, Apple is deliberately going out of the way to make devices after 12 months somewhat become less working than what they were before. But personally, I don't think that's the case. I think we still see iPhone 5s, iPhone 6s, so devices that are 10 years plus old, still working, and you can tell it haven't had repair works done to them. So I think, if you're playing, it depends on what side of the industry you're playing on. If you're playing more towards that level of not being a repair outfit, the difference between a new and a refurbished device are very, very similar.
Interesting. So what are some of the financial benefits of buying refurbished electronics? How much money could you save with a refurbished?
Again, as you're starting to get down in model, if I use an example of the iPhone 11 Pro, 64 gig, brand new, you're still talking $1,400 to $1,500, depending on what the retailer that you buy it from, brand new. You can buy the exact same device on Frank in what we call mint condition, which is literally an as-new device for about $1,100 maximum. So you're talking a $300-$400 saving for almost the same handset. And then again, as you start to go down that line, so we have different levels of grading called mint, great, good, and character condition. So a device that has been clearly used before aesthetically, they've all passed the internal functionality check. But if you're talking like a good iPhone 11, well, that $300-$400 saving can now be closer to $400-$500 saving. So to me, it's pretty significant. It's enough to make you actually kind of stand up and go, do I really need to look at getting a new device? And if you can, I think, have the trust points around your product and provide that 12-month warranty, that after-sale support, I really think it's worth giving it a go.
What are some of the key benefits for the environment in buying a refurbished phone rather than a new one?
Yeah, it's definitely a key part of Frank Mobile, and going back to, not to digress too much, but going back to how I started Frank, I always wanted to be involved in a business that part of its core DNA was having a beneficial impact to people and the planet. We still do a lot of work with charities as well, and we'll go out of our way to do those more bespoke charitable campaigns. But the benefits of playing in refurbished industry is you're extending the life cycle of something to its greatest capacity. So for iPhones, as an example, 80% of its carbon emissions are generated from the time of production, and then the final 20% are actually when we use it. So our day-to-day operations, connecting into data, using the mobile network. So 80% of that footprint is generated up front. So if you're buying and choosing to go with a refurbished handset, well, the longer you can use a device for, the less upfront carbon emissions are being generated from that handset. So for us, we believe that one of the best things you can do for the world is keep our stuff in use for longer. So if you can provide a channel that's easy for people to, one, sell their old handsets, then also two, somebody to come and buy that, it's a pretty significant impact. I think it's pretty cool to note that Apple only recently came out and put their stake in the ground to be a completely carbon neutral company by 2030. So they've laid a very open roadmap on how they're going to get there. And I really see us as, yes, part of our proposition as a brand is to somewhat be the challenger to brand new handsets, but we really actually see ourselves more as complementary in a way. And if you can have businesses that support the longevity of products coming from the manufacturers, I think that's a pretty good enabler to them. So you're talking a pretty good upfront a benefit to the environment by choosing to buy refurbished.
What are some of the common misconceptions people may have about refurbished electronics?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest one, and we alluded to it a little bit before, was they think it's dodgy and they think it might be completely opened up, harvested for parts, dodgy parts going in from, say, overseas suppliers or imports. And look, part of that is, it is true, and you can read the stories of people's experiences in dealing with refurbished. So our real challenge as a brand is to elevate the standard of the whole entire industry. And our competitors as such, well, to be honest, our competitors, they're the greatest competition in our space is increasing that consumer awareness that refurbished doesn't mean dodgy. But that is probably the largest challenge that people have, where we have to overcome that as an industry, not just as Frank Mobile, but as an industry, we actually have to raise the standard of the whole category. And I think consumers are becoming more aware of that. And I think you look closely to somewhat synergistic industries like your fashion, your fast fashion. There are so many good brands coming out with very innovative trade-in reuse program. RM Williams have just come out where you can trade in your old boots and get a credit on your account, and those boots are then going back into the life cycle. So I think as more large businesses realize that not only should they, but somewhat have a responsibility to keep things in the system for as long as possible, it's only going to help the entire industry. But until we get there, all we can focus on as part of Frank Mobile's proposition is literally everything from customer care, after sales support, guaranteed warranties, and all that more after sales component.
Based on your opinion, what factors do you think have contributed to an increase in electronic waste?
Lack of awareness and probably lack of education. I'm so empathetic towards when things are challenging to do, they often don't get done. And I'll be the first to admit as well, I've still got boxes of old modems or CPUs sitting in my cupboard because I've no longer needed them. Well, I knew I didn't want to throw them in the bin because I knew that's bad, but didn't know what to do with it. Luckily now I do know what to do with it, so it's actually just me stopping being lazy and actually now doing something with it. But if you, two points to that. To me, there's a lack of awareness and a lack of somewhat education around. If I can be honest, I'm kind of somewhat overhearing about how bad it all is. We know how bad electronic waste is. We know how bad waste is in general. I really think we should be moving towards more of a more positive story attached to it, and the benefits that come from actually trying to reduce your footprint, whether it's through e-waste or anything else. So I think big brands are becoming more aware that they have a responsibility. This is no longer just a CSR story, that brands have a responsibility to act in best accordance with the people and the planet. So as more awareness becomes of this industry, I think that education down to the consumer level is going to do nothing but add value to people. But then the next domino is actually how do you make it easy for people to participate in doing the right thing, because it is hard. And again, I'm empathetic towards when things are too hard, people don't do them. So I think the next challenge is to try and have creative, innovative solutions to help make it easy for people to participate in reducing their own footprint, whether that's through mobile trade-in programs. We have a separate part of our business called easy.com.au where you can actually come and sell your old handset, where people don't know that the residual value of their broken phones is still worth $50, $100, $200. They just don't know. So I think it's that two-pronged attack: brand awareness and education, and then making it easy for consumers.
Great, that's great. That's all the questions I have. I'm just gonna make sure this is